Hi, and good afternoon. I'm Laura Zervis, and I'm here today to present some nutrition content for Lending Hearts. I'm really happy to be here. I'm a registered, excuse me, registered dietitian and licensed nutritionist, and I love bringing recipes to you that I would use myself, and that I think that would you would benefit from adding to your weekly repertoire too. And I try to provide things that are not only fun and seasonal to take advantage of whatever produce is in season at the time, but to also provide you something with nutritious, something that you don't have to buy crazy ingredients for, that you should be able to find in any grocery store, farmer's market, what have you. So you could enjoy all the fruits and vegetables that the seasons have to offer. And we also try to be mindful, always making sure that that they're within the sodium guidelines, that they're within the saturated fat guidelines, added sugar, dietary fiber. Try to bring things that are high in dietary fiber to you. So let's get started. Today we have three things. We usually have four, but today we have three because there's one that's going to take a lot of time. And sometimes I skip a few steps just to make sure that we could fit it all in. But I think it'd be a good idea to go over some of those basics because it really makes all the difference. So today we're going to be doing a warm bean and spinach dip, and I love this. And it gets its creaminess from pureed cannellini beans, cooked spinach. If you don't like spinach, there's other alternatives that we're going to talk about. But that's a very nice dish to take to your tailgate party, or to have if you're having book club and you need a nice warm appetizer. It's perfect for this time of year. Pairs well with so many things too, because it's just so light and delicious, but also satisfying. And it can be served with, it has a variety of options if you are under some type of weight management program, or you're trying to get in more dietary fiber. Certainly we could serve these with carrot sticks and celery and raw peppers. Those would be really nice with this. You could also serve it with pita chips, or pretzels or crackers, or baguette would be very nice too. So many options you have there. We also have a really nice chicken and mushroom soup, which I think you're going to love. There's so many variations, but I think you're going to like it because it's a nice, warm, and hearty soup. It's perfect for this time of year. Comes together really nicely. Also cost effective, right? With the cost of groceries right now, these are all cost effective items. And then our last item that we have is just trying to take advantage of some of the vegetables that we have available to us, so that we're talking about the root vegetables. We're going to roast some of the root vegetables just a little bit different than we typically do. So let's get started. I think we're going to get started with our spinach dip because that takes a little bit of time in the oven. And then we'll start with our vegetables, and then we'll get on to our soup. So the spinach dip is really nice. And what we're going to do, let me show you our prep. Should say warm bean and spinach dip. Let me adjust the camera. So we have a cup of cannellini beans. Really, you could use a Great Northern. You could also use a garbanzo bean, but I think you'll find that this has a nice creamy texture. We're going to saute, first we're going to saute some garlic in olive oil. We're going to add our spinach, and then we're going to do separately, we're going to put these in the food processor and add our yogurt to it, and our Parmesan cheese, and a little bit of fresh lemon juice that we have here. And then we're going to put that all together and bake it in the oven. So let me get started. I'm going to get our skillet here, add some olive oil, turn that on, get that started, and then I'm going to add my garlic to it. And I have 2 cloves of garlic here. And if you, I think it's a nice idea because it imparts so much flavor. And if you, I had talked about some substitutes. If you're not a fan of spinach, roasted red peppers would work really nicely here as well. They're going to puree really nicely and smoothly with everything else in the finished product. I think you're going to like that. So let's give little bit of a turn here, and then we're going to add our spinach. And I have about 3 cups of spinach, and that's going to, I have a nice baking dish that we're going to put it in. I've already coated it with some nonstick spray. I like to use avocado spray. It's really nice to use. It has a very high smoke point, which makes it very nice for all of your baking and cooking needs. Any brand will do. That's just the one that was available to me. But again, and it imparts, it's not going to, don't be afraid to use it. You might want to experiment. It doesn't have a strong flavor at all, and it lends itself real nicely to other things that you may be making. So here our garlic. We just want to bring that out. We don't want to do it, we don't want to overcook it. We don't want to make it bitter. So we just want to make it be fragrant. So we're just talking 1 to 2 minutes in that oil. That to put our spinach in here. Like I said, I have 3 cups. And we're just going to, and I packed it tightly because when you have spinach, it is you can start off with a really big container, and when you cook it down, you're left with this little just a really small amount. So I did put a lot of spinach in here, did pack it real tightly. I'll just turn that down and we'll wilt that, and I just want to keep turning that. Again, we don't want to burn it or just real gently. And it shouldn't take too long, and it just wilts so quickly. You could also use, if you wanted something a little stronger, you could use kale. That would be nice. But I think the spinach and the beans are going to go real well together. But certainly, whatever beans you have on hand, I encourage you to try that. Okay. So I'm just going to turn this down really, really low. Get it away from the edges so it doesn't get caught. And then we'll get started on our beans. So let me just set this aside, all of our mise en place, and mise en place is all of our ingredients together, so we have everything. And it's a good idea to do that, to read through your menu or recipe rather, gather all the ingredients, have them all ready to go. So there's no surprises, there's no steps in the middle. Oh, now put this in the oven for 30 minutes or chill in the refrigerator for a half hour. So you always want to make sure that you read through your recipes really well to make sure you have all the equipment, all the ingredients, and that you're prepared for extra time for refrigeration or anything like that. So let me bring our food processor over. I'll adjust the camera, and hopefully you're not you're familiar with food processor. If you're not, it's very easy to use. I'm going to adjust my camera so you can see. I'm going to actually turn it to you. Sometimes we have these gadgets and they can be a little intimidating. Okay, so very easy to use. So obviously you see our on off, and if we press down the on button, it's going to stay pulsing, or it's going to chop continuously. If we just use the pulse button, it's just going to give us that option just to make short bursts of cutting. You always want to make sure this is our bowl. This is our blade, and that's the lid. And you can see the bowl is always going to lock in. So we push it here, and there's actually something in the back here that engages. And you want to make sure that this is nice and tight. It's not going to work unless it is. Your blade has on the inside, it fits like a little puzzle in there. So it's only going to go on one way. And it should fit nicely and snugly. And then I'm using this away from you, but I always remember is the logo for my particular machine is always going to be in the front. And then this part in the back here, let me show you, this engages in here. So if that doesn't engage, it's not going to turn it on. So we have a couple of things. The blade has to be in correctly. The lid has to be on correctly. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of safety measures here that have to work. So just good to know. So we're going to put our beans in here. Let's get that in here first. And there's a couple other things I want to tell you about using a food processor. I'm just going to put my beans in here. And by the way, that is 1 15-ounce can. I did rinse them to get off all of that extra starch. And our spinach is coming along nicely. I just don't want it to catch. Okay, very good. Just gonna turn it so the hot pieces are on top and they make the other ones wilt. Like I said, it wilts down so much. So we really it's a good idea to pack that. So what we're gonna do is we have our cannellini beans. I have some yogurt here, about a quarter cup of unflavored, fat-free Greek yogurt, or I should say zero fat. And then we're going to add our Parmesan, and we just have 2 tables of Parmesan cheese. And then we have our lemon. Where'd my lemon go? And here, this is just fresh squeezed lemon juice, about 2 to 3 tablespoons. And that really does, it brightens it. There's no other way to say it. It just brightens it so nicely. And then we're going to add a couple of our red pepper flakes. Well, it's not going to make it too spicy, but it's just going to give it a little bit of flavor. So we're just going to add a few. And then we're going to pulse this together. And we could also add some water in here too if we need to. Just depends on your beans. So again, I'm going to, on my machine, the logo goes up front, push this in, and then I will show you. Let me check on my spinach. And it's very nice. Okay. So, all right, that is the continuous, and this is the pulse. That's the pulse off. See how it does? So I like to just leave a little bit of, we want to make this a little bit smooth. Okay. And I don't think we're going to need any water in here. Then we're going to add our spinach. You can see here, it's really nice. That smells wonderful. Set this aside. I think I'm going to grab another dish here instead. Oh my goodness, does that smell wonderful? Now we're going to pulse this all together. And we want to leave this part just a little bit chunkier. Just by leaving it chunky, it's gonna, there we go. So we just want to make sure that our spinach is chopped, and it is. This looks beautiful. And I decided to use a different, and I'll tell you why, because it's not a big recipe and I want to make sure there's a lot of surface area. And what I mean by that is if it's too deep, if this bowl is too deep this way, then there's not a lot of surface area. And once you take away the top, you're left with all of that that's underneath. And it could be, one, it's not going to have a crust on it. And two, it might not get, might not cook as well thoroughly throughout, I should say. So I did spray this, and we're just going to add our dip to this. It smells wonderful. And this is an excellent alternative. A lot of times around the holiday season, you see artichoke dips, and they get their creaminess from cream cheese or from mayonnaise. And we just have some yogurt and the creaminess of our beans. So this is an excellent alternative to some of those recipes that we've seen in the past. So this is a nice made over recipe, just like this. And we're going to stick this in the oven. And I would say probably about 10 to 12 minutes. You want to serve this hot. So let me get this in the oven. And put on our timer so we don't forget about it. And then we're going to add our roasted vegetables. We'll do those next. So I have a bunch of different vegetables today, and we're going to do something a little bit different for them just to give it that fall feel. So here, I'll just keep my camera like that. We have parsnips, which we'll talk about those, butternut squash, carrots, Brussels sprouts. And I have another one here that I didn't cut yet that I thought we would cut together. So that would be the beets. So let me get my little paring knife here, and I just waited for the end of these. Just want to cut off both ends, and then we're going to peel it real nicely. And I like to, oftentimes I will just boil these. That's a lot less work. Go. And then we have a little smaller one here. And I'm just doing this for some color. I thought this would be nice. We have all of our root vegetables. Butternut squash obviously is not a root vegetable, but our parsnips and our carrots are, and obviously Brussels sprouts aren't either, but the beets and carrots and parsnips. It's going to get that off. It was a little bit woody there. And you could also too, if you're, yeah. Just trim off any pieces. I just picked these out of the garden the other day before it was going to frost. So this is my last batch of beets for the year. But you could still find, you could get these in the grocery store all year round. And they're just, I feel like they're a little bit, the tender factor is much more noticeable in the homegrown. But I still think, but the ones you're going to get in the grocery store are still an excellent product. So I like to slice these typically, but I have all chunks. So I'm going to keep them chunks too, just so they get cooked at the same time. So we're just going to make some random little shapes here, but making sure that we're pretty close to the size of our other vegetables so they all cook at the same time. And I should be using my French knife for this and not my paring. But this makes a this is going to make, and I picked these one too because I think it'll be nice and colorful. Where is my French knife? I have a smaller one. Okay, so they're pretty uniform in size, same as our other vegetables. So we have our parsnip here. Let me show you one of those in case you don't know what that looks like. And I'm going to, let's see here. I'm going to keep them separate because of the beets. I don't want everything else turning purple. I don't want my beautiful parsnips turning purple. So I'm going to do those first. And I'm going to, actually, I'm going to do them last so everything doesn't get, let's do our butternut squash. And we're going to toss that in here. Toss it with a little bit of olive oil. And kosher salt. Toss those around. So that you want all of them to get coated. And we're gonna put them, I'm gonna use parchment today. Some days we do, some days we don't. I'm just going to do that just to make for easier cleanup. And then we'll do our Brussels. And I had a very hard time with Brussels today. They were, the first batch that I bought was actually pretty, I could see one here that doesn't look very nice. They were just a little bit, I had to take so many leaves off to get them, to get to the good part. carrots. Snip. We'll do our parsnips on another one. So here we have all of our vegetables for the first one. There you go. And then what we're going to do about this one is we're just going to put a tiny bit of maple syrup on here. So I'm just going to put it on my spoon, about a tablespoon, and I'm just going to drizzle that over. Have enough too much. We don't want to take away the flavor of our vegetables. Right, and then we'll add our parsnips and our beets. Let me show you. This is a parsnip. If you've ever, if you haven't used them, I encourage you to try them. And I peel it the same way I peel a carrot. It has a distinct smell too, a little bit like a carrot, a little bit like, a little bit like, I guess it's like a, has the smell of a carrot. And get those in there. So what do I love about parsnips is they are loaded with fiber. They're loaded with phytonutrients, not the common ones. We're always talking about the anthocyanins, the anthoxanthins. These ones have a whole different set of them. They're wonderful. They're wonderful at reducing, her heart disease because they have antioxidant qualities. So turn with your salt. Last but not least, we'll do our beets. And sometimes I'm doing together. I'm just doing them. I'm probably going to serve them all together, but I'm just showing you today for class, just, just to keep them all separate. I didn't want, and I did get some of our parsnips. They turned a little bit purple, but from our beets because of my cutting board and knife. But just a small amount of the syrup. That's for maple syrup. You could also use honey. Let me take out our spinach dip. And put in our vegetables. We are. And it's bubbling, so we know that's ready. I'm just going to put that up a little bit, and you could show you our dip, and you could see how it's, I don't know if you could hear it, and you could also see it, it's bubbling. You could see how it's sliding there. So it's nice, it's homogeneous, it's all one, it's nice and heated through. It's going to make a wonderful appetizer. We'll just set it over here. And then we're going to get started on our soup. So this is, soup is probably one of my favorite things to make. Worked in a restaurant for a while. And one stint that I had, I was always the soup person. So always a different soup. Lots of fun. You could really get creative. So this one I think you'll really like. It's a little bit hearty. And we're going to go over some of the steps. I don't know if you remembered about a while ago, we did one, just the classic cream soup and how to make one. And it was cream soup, but it was really like a pureed soup. It was thickened soup and it was just finished with either a tiny bit of cream, or we also, there was some instances where we did milk and a little bit of yogurt, or milk and a little bit of sour cream. But today, this one is going to get its thickness. We're going to first saute our vegetables. So I'll get that started. And we have our, and I'll tell you what I did today. I just want to get these started for us. And we're going to put in some butter. Let me turn up that heat. So this morning before class, because I just love, this is one of my favorite things to do, is we needed 2 quarts of stock and I just really wanted to use our own. So I took 5 chicken thighs, which we needed today, with the skin on, with the bone in, and I put them in our pot with about a little more than 2 quarts of water because we knew some was going to waste, probably closer to 3. And then we knew it was going to reduce. Just a teaspoon of kosher salt, rough cut carrots, onion, celery, and tomato. So it gave us this beautiful stock, which I'm going to show you right now. First of all, we're going to remove our chicken thighs out of there because we're going to take the skin off of those and get the meat and put the meat back in the soup. So as soon as our butter gets melted, we will add the vegetables. So let's get our thighs out first, and they should be cooked really well. The biggest complaint that I hear about people with soup is, oh, well, I don't want all that sodium. So I don't like to use commercial stocks. I like to use my own. So this makes, and I didn't add any bouillon, anything else. So you'll see how beautiful this color is. So what we're going to do is I just did a rough cut of carrots, celery, and onion, tomato. So we don't need those. We're going to discard those. The celery that we're going to actually have in our soup, we didn't saute yet. So let me, I don't know if you could, let me see if I could show this to you. So you could see what we made. So there, look at that color. That's beautiful. And that's all just our wonderful ingredients. There's no funny business in there, just wonderful, clean ingredients. So our butter's melted. I'm going to start with our onion in there and let that cook. And also the vegetables, it's a little bit more time. The celery and the carrots. And about a cup of each. I like to have a lot more vegetables in my soup. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a clean stock pot and we're going to use, it's called a fine chinois, which literally means China cap. So, and you can see that it's fine. The holes are very, very little in here. There's also grand chinois, which is like a larger hole in here for other types of things that you may want to strain. So ideally, I would have a bigger pot, but we don't need one today. And so my China cap is a little bit oversized, but we're just going to pour this right in here and you could see the color that we're getting from here. So we won't have any kind of leftover sinew or pieces of skin or anything else in our stock. It's going to be nice and clean. And sometimes I use these vegetables for other things. Just depends what I'm doing. I might puree them and put them in something else because they're just so much flavor. I would never discard these. Worst case scenario, I will eat them. Okay, so I'm going to stick this back and then I'm going to show you what this beautiful stock we made. So worth it. So I put this on before class this morning about maybe 2 to 3 hours ago. And just look at this color that we have. No need to add any bouillon or starters or anything like that. This is bursting with flavor. And we want to saute our onions, carrots, and celery until they're soft. Okay, so we have our stock. I'll set that aside. I'm gonna put that on low, actually. Okay, and then we have our chicken. So we're just going to pull this apart and we're going to save it. We're gonna add it to our soup. So let me get another. And we're just gonna pull off that skin and pull any meat. The easiest way is to just pull the bone right off. Go. We have all that wonderful meat. But the bone is what gives us all that flavor. So again, this cooked about, about 3 hours. So it's real easy, just falling right off the bone. You could also look, if you don't have the time, or if this type of this doesn't appeal to you, you can always, some people, I have many clients that don't like to touch chicken. They don't like to be involved in this process. You could buy a rotisserie chicken. You can use a canned stock. That is okay. I'm just talking, if you want to keep that sodium down and you want to keep an eye on your ingredients, but that is also an excellent option. It's still going to be a really good quality tasting soup. So I'm going to get a fresh cutting board. And here, French knife. And I'm just going to give these a rough chop, making sure that they don't have any extra skin or sinew or anything that undesirable. They're like there's a little bit of fat. We don't want that. Also, if if you're don't want to do this part, you could put this in a food processor as well. But I would just do it on the pulse just till it chopped it up. I would not put it on the continuous mode. Okay, so I'm gonna give my vegetables a stir. And they're getting nice and tender. And they're getting coated, which is also part of what we want to do, okay? We're just gonna let them go. And also remember, I have my stock on in the back. It's getting nice and hot. Okay, so let's get back to our chicken here. Doesn't have to be cut it in any certain way. Just, we don't want to, we want it to be kind of homogeneous, so you're not biting, there's not large pieces, there's not, I guess maybe uniform would be the better word. So everybody gets a little bit of chicken in their serving. And pretty soon we'll go stir our vegetables. And if, I had chicken thighs with the skin on hand and bone in. You could also use a whole chicken. I do that frequently if I'm making this soup, or if I'm making like a Greek lemon soup, the Diablo lemon soup. And then what I do is I will save that chicken for other things that I'm making. If I have like a dip that chicken goes into, that's a nice idea. Okay, and let me give our vegetables a stir, and they're perfect. So we're going to let them go just a little bit more, get them nice and tender. And I'm going to wash my knife so I could use it for the mushrooms. Okay. And I got that nice and clean. And we'll set our chicken aside. So when we're ready to put it back into the our soup, we're ready. Okay. Then we have ready for our mushrooms. And I have, well, before we do that, we should probably keep an eye on our vegetables. See how they're coming along, and they're doing nicely, really nicely. So that looks good. Okay, so they're cooking well. Give this a stir. And they're getting nice. Okay. So by the time we add our mushrooms, they should be perfect. You want them pretty soft. It's not going to take, they'll cook a little bit more once our mushrooms are on. So let's get our mushrooms, already washed them, already drained them. And we want them to, we're not going to rough chop these. We want them to look nice. So we're going to slice them nicely. And if the slices are too big, slice it in half. And then slice again. And remember, we always want to wash our mushrooms in cold water. And see how they're nice and white. And like I said, so the carrots, onion, and celery, they're going to be cooked well through. And our mushrooms, since I'm cutting them a little bit smaller, they're not going to need a lot of time anyhow. And it's not, they wouldn't take as much time as the as those vegetables. But again, not a rough chop, just a nice slice. I'm gonna leave that one out because it looked a little bit not in its prime, past its prime. And mushrooms are really available to us year round. You see them a lot in the fall. And they give it, you could also do this if you wanted to. We could make a nice vegetable stock. And we could just have this be, this could have been, we could have left it plain, just mushrooms, or we could have added tofu and mushrooms. There's so many different variations. If you need any of these recipe modified, just let me know. I'm going to bring this over to you so you could see what we've got going on here. Just going to put those aside. Let me get my pot holder. And you can see right here. So they're nice and soft. And we're going to add our mushrooms now. And we want to get these well coated, so I'm going to give them a good stir. I'm still going to add just a little bit of oil because we ran out of, I think we have enough butter in there. I don't want to add more saturated fat. So we're going to return this to the stove and I'll tell you about the next steps. And again, the mushrooms don't have to cook as long. And also when we return it to the pot, they're going to cook in that stock too. So we want, the goal here is just to get them all coated with the fat, with the butter and the olive oil. Okay, so we're going to keep turning those. All right. So let's check on, let me see how our vegetables are doing. They're doing nicely. Those go. Okay. So if you remember in the 5 steps of making a pureed soup or a cream soup is the 5 S's. So the first one is saute, and that's just like we're doing now. And you want to saute in a good fat. You could use clarified butter, that is the preferred. You could use salt pork to get to render that, or bacon. Again, those are higher in saturated fat. You could also use olive oil. All those are work. Avocado oil, if you remember in our one of our sauces, our enchilada sauce, we use the avocado oil because it gives it a very nice sheen. I think you're going to find that this is going to have a nice sheen to it also because of the quality of the stock that we made. But the 5 S's, so saute, the next step is sanger, and that's the French word, and that is to dust with flour. So I'm going to show you that. So we'll look at this. Everything is coated. So I'll bring this over and we'll do that next step together. So again, saute and then songe. Songe is conduct with flour. So I have about 2 tablespoons of flour. You could hear that sizzling. Just gonna dust. And this is why we wanted our stock to be hot too. And then this is also the point where we season. So we will season, I have some thyme, and then I also have salt and pepper. Let me get the pepper. Especially since we're not using a commercial stock, you might need to skip that salt part. But we don't have too much in ours, so we're gonna do some pepper. And we did the thyme and also some salt, a little bit of kosher salt. And get it a nice, wonderful. Okay, so now that it's all coated, and like I said, our mushrooms, they were cooked mostly. They didn't need as much time. They were very tender. We cut them small. The carrots, the celery, and the onion were nice and tender. What we're gonna do now is add our hot stock. So I'm gonna grab that. Okay. What we're going to do is we'll give that a stir, and we're gonna keep stirring that. So saute, songe, season, add hot stock, and the last step is to simmer. So we're gonna let this come together and simmer real nicely. And it's going to thicken because of the flour, because of the fat. So let's return it. It's not going to thicken until we bring it up to temperature. And that is just like the case with a roux too. So if you're cooking with your roux, you want to make sure you cook that roux long enough, depending on if it's going to be a white sauce or a brown sauce. And then when you add your stock, your milk, whatever you're using, whatever liquid you're using, you want to make sure that you bring it to a boil. If you don't bring it to a boil, that will never reach its full potential thick, the thickest that it could possibly be. So if you don't bring that to it just has to come to one boil, and then you would simmer it. But if it doesn't come to a boil, it's not going to achieve that maximum or that optimal thickness that you're looking for. And then it's what was the point of your good roux and all these good steps in there. So just to remember that. So I'm going to give this a stir while we're talking. And I'm going to turn up our heat a little bit. And you'll see it starting to thick. Worst case scenario, if it didn't thick, there's always a couple of things you could do. You could also make some, and this is perfect, so I wouldn't do anything to it. But if you wanted to, you could take some of this out and you could puree it a small amount. There's a mechanical way to thicken it. You could also make it a little additional roux. Take a little saute pan, equal parts fat and flour. That could be butter, oil, and flour, and then make a roux, and then take a small amount of the liquid out of your pan, and then you're going to add it to that roux, mix those together, cook that a little bit, and then return it to the pot and then bring it up to heat. So you don't want to just throw extra roux into this beautiful soup that we've made so far, because it could be lumpy, and it might not get emulsified in there, and it just might stay lumpy. So it's best to assess that, now. Do I want to do that now? If so, make some. And then add it to there, but this is getting nice and thick, just the way it is. And it didn't come to a boil yet, so once it comes to a boil, we'll see. And then we're also going to add our chicken to here too. But I'd like to wait till it comes to, once it comes to a boil, then we'll add our chicken, and then we'll just let it simmer just so everything could get cooked and all those flavors could come together. So that's where we are with that. Let's look at our dip. We'll plate that up, and we will also get ready to get everything ready to plate our soup. Got a nice bistro bowl here. And we'll get that ready, and we'll get something ready for our dip. I have that over here. And that's really firmed up nicely. So put that in a bowl and we could see what that looks like. Go. Oh, I had one around here. And here's my other spoon. Okay. So we'll just take some out. We'll get a nice little portion here. And it's nice and it's perfect. It came out really nicely. You could leave it in that pan. I just wanted to show you what it looked like. So that is it in our dish. It's still warm. So you could always just leave it out in this dish. You might want to serve it. You might want to put like a little dollop of Greek yogurt or something like that on it, and maybe even some chives. And then you could set this in the middle and have all of your vegetables around it. I think that would make a lovely appetizer. And healthy too. Remember, here we're coming up on all of this, the holiday season, and there's going to be so much parties and events to attend. You want to make sure if you are invited somewhere and asked to bring something, that you want to bring the healthy item, the good dip or the good appetizer or hors d'oeuvre that people can indulge in. And because there are so many, if you only had one event to attend, it really would be a blip on the screen, right? But when we talk about this time of year, going to several events a week, maybe 2 to 3, maybe, your organizations that you belong to might be having holiday parties, and you might find that your social schedule is really full. So if you're going out just one time, then I would say go ahead and indulge. But if you're going out 3 times a week, then you're going to have to pick and choose. Because once you start doing that, then it's really changing your pattern. And that could have you feeling a lot differently on January 1st versus just having one time of doing something like that versus, maybe a dozen or more times where you're celebrating and it's occasion and event after event. It's a great time of the year to get together. You just have to approach it wisely, make your decisions, decide where you want to splurge. Decide where you want to indulge. I tell clients that have many birthday parties to go to, clients with young children are always they might have multiple birthday parties on the weekend. And if you know that there's a certain something that's going to be served at one of the parties, and that's something that you really like, make that the party that you have some of that. And if it's something that, like a nice lean protein or lots of vegetables, I think that's great to fill up on. And if it's something that doesn't look so healthy, or it doesn't look, maybe it's one of those older recipes that just really hasn't been made over to be, heart healthy, then just watch your portion size, and that'll minimize any damage. But you don't want to be, the only person not eating. So it's a good idea to just make that assessment before you go. Try to fill up on the vegetables, and fruit is also good as well. So let me see how our soup is doing. And it has come to a boil. And it's nice and it has a good thickness to it. So let's add our chicken back to it. And this will make, like I said, you don't have to go to the make the stock yourself. But I find it too, like if we didn't do it today, it could be something that could be done the night before, just throwing a few pieces of chicken in a pot with a lot of vegetables like that. And again, they're just rough cut. So it's not like they have to be perfect at that time. It could just be rough, as long as you peel it or scrub that carrot, and you don't even have to cut your onion. It could just be peeled, and celery, just wash it. It could be leaves. Sometimes we discard the leaves and there's so much flavor in the leaves. So I would just encourage you to throw that all in there and just let it go. And before you retire for the evening, just put it in the refrigerator, and it will make a nice stock for you. Something that's, cost effective, delicious. and you know the ingredients. So I'm gonna check on our vegetables, and they are beautiful. I'm just gonna give them a little stir. Just the camera for you so you can see. Again, the turnips have a really good flavor, nice smell to them. Let's give them a little poke to see if they're, oh yeah, they're tender, nice and creamy. Our beets need a little bit more time. Ah, they're kind of close too. Let's just put them back in to get them a little bit darker, a little bit crisper. Let's bring out our butternut squash and carrots and Brussels. We want them all to get brown, so I'm gonna stick them back in there. So if they don't finish, our carrots are getting nice and brown. If they don't finish, I will make sure that all of these pictures are posted on the website. All the recipes will be there too. These back in here. Let's portion out our soup so you can see that. And I'm also going to get some baguette for us. Okay. Here, I'll bring the soup over to you. And it smells wonderful. Really, really good. So you could see it's creamy. It's not, it's a little bit, it's thicker than a broth soup, but it's a lot thinner than a cream-based soup. And I think it's gonna be really nice. It smells delicious. Very, very nice. And you see that good color that we have just from our own homemade broth. And then what we'll do is with our baguette, probably should toast it. It's a little bit past its prime. Very much past its prime. So what I'll do is I'll toast this and then I will serve it with our dip, like a crostini. And we'll just put that on a little serving dish. Where's our dip at? Thanks. There we have our soup. Also could be served with some nice warm baguette. And we have our vegetables, which are, I don't want to take them out yet. I want them to get nicely brown. So I will make sure that I post those for you. Again, the parsnips, if you haven't tried them, it's a really, really good root vegetable to try, high in fiber, high in phytonutrients, antioxidants. They do have, there is a relationship with them and heart disease, decreasing heart disease. Obviously, that would be eating a lot of parsnips, but if they're part of your regular diet, along with eating 5 serving of fruits and vegetables, 2 to 3 servings of fish per week, legumes like nuts, almonds, walnuts. The walnuts are the only one with the omega-3 fatty acids, using fresh herbs and spices, and also using the chia seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds, also for those omega-3 fatty acids too. So all part of a healthy diet, lots of water, good whole grains. We had our yogurt today. So many good products that we used today. We didn't use any, we did use some butter, but we did use some olive oil. But no, nothing else was highly processed. We made our own stock, which I think you'll like. And with the spinach dip, we use fresh spinach. I encourage you to use the fresh spinach versus frozen. Frozen, whenever you're making it a dip, it's hard to get out all of the liquid. And that's even with washing it, like I washed the spinach this morning, let it dry, let it completely dry, because if it doesn't, it's going to be mushy. Spinach already cooks down a good bit, but you don't want any of that extra water. And you get that frequently with frozen spinach. And it's very hard to get out that excess water. It always has a little bit different of a taste. Anything that I'm making spinach in, any spinach pies or anything like that, I always use fresh. And I highly recommend that you do that too. It's just a much better product. And the cannellini beans, again, we could have done something different. We could have used a different type of bean. This could have been roasted red peppers, which maybe I think I'll do that next time, because you're still going to get that nice creaminess with the beans, and it's just going to be, and that would be a nice one. We could have the spinach, and then we could have the one with the red peppers, and they could be on the same plate for the holidays, little red and green. So that might be fun too. Let me just peek at the vegetables to see if they'll be done before class is over. Looks like our parsnips are done, so why don't we go ahead and serve those up? I'll move our soup. Oh, soup's hot. Get our nice serving bowl here. I'm gonna take our Brussels and our carrots out, but our butternut squash, it just needs a little bit more time. And then what I also did, which I'm not gonna, you'll see it on the website, I also toasted some pecans before that, because since we were doing a little bit of the maple, I thought it might be fun to have a little bit of a crunch in there too. So we have toasted pecans to go with our maple roasted vegetables. And again, not a whole lot of maple syrup, just a little bit to give it flavor, and that's something that's optional. You don't have to do that. I just wanted to add a new flavor dimension for fall for us. But I'm gonna spread these out a little bit. Need some more time to brown. There's only a few of them that are brown. Let's get those back in. And our parsnips and the beets look good, so we'll add those too. I can almost just take them off like this. There we go. So I would call this a nice melange of autumn vegetables. Gonna look even nicer when we have our butternut squash in here, but let's just look at how nice this is gonna look on your fall table. So beautiful dish here. And then, like I said, I have some toasted pecans. We could add those on as well, just to make your fall table just a little bit more, not only nutritious, but a little bit colorful too, because we eat with our eyes and we want it to look good. So while, we could come up with a lot of things that taste good, it's important that it looks good also. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had a great time. I hope you learned something along the way, any nutrition tips. Again, all the recipes will be on my website, laurazervos.com. You'll also receive a link to them. Try to include a little bit more information. There'll be lots of pictures, so we'll see that butternut squash on there too. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Try some of these recipes. Try getting those 5 servings of fruits and vegetables in a day, the lean proteins, and you'll stay on the path to wellness. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.